Hey guys, Brian here and welcome to the first video. I want to show you guys 4 chords that I use in pretty much every worship set. I mean, from like the powerful moments in like the bridge and chorus parts to the verses of a song where you got to feel some sound. These chords are my go-to. Let me just show you real quickly. These are like my favorite go-to chords, especially as the only electric guitarist usually in the team. I find that these chords really fill up a lot of sound really quickly. And to be honest, I usually, like almost always, replace these chords over the original way it was played in the album. So I'm actually going to split this video up in 2 parts. In part 1 today, I'm going to go over how to play the chords because there's a little bit of a technique behind them. And then on part 2, we're going to whip out the pedal board and then I'll show you how I designed my tone. So let's dive right in. So we're going to go through this in the key of G. If you don't know what that means, don't worry about it. Just keep that in mind. So the first chord we're going to play is the G chord. So we're going to index finger and put it on the 5th fret of the D string. You're going to get your ring finger and put it on the 7th fret of the G string. And then we're going to get our pinky, put it on the 8th fret of the B string. First, pick through the 3 strings and make sure they're clean. And now the next thing I need to mention is this is really important technique that you need to know in order to play these 4 chords well. The idea is that you're going to be playing those 3 strings, but at the same time mute the other 3 that you're not playing. Let me show you what I mean. This one chord, the way I'm holding it, is able to mute 3 strings and play 3 strings at the same time. And honestly, this is going to take some trial and error, but let me show you how I do it just to give you a starting place. The three notes, I'm just playing it, holding it as is, but what I'm doing is I'm using this middle finger here, and I'm using the top right here to hold, just touch the first 2 strings, the E string and the A string. Right, I'm using my middle finger to do that. But at the base of my finger right here, like the calyce part right here, I'm touching the edge of my guitar neck so that it touches the E string so that doesn't play. It's really just this one finger that's doing that for me. It could be different for you, but I just recommend you to just move around your hand and trial and error with this. But this is how I get this clean chord. So this might be the most difficult part of learning these chords, this muting technique. So spend a good amount of time on it. You don't want to skimp out on learning these kinds of chords. And I promise when you start learning other chords and other licks and lines that require this kind of muting, it's going to be a lot easier. So next we're going to go over the D chord. And for the D chord, we're going to start by holding the G chord. And what you're going to do is you're going to get your pinky and you're going to slide it back to the 7th fret on the same string. Just slide that back. It's going to be beneath the ring finger. And then for the index finger, you're going to go up 1 string on the 5th fret. So 5th fret, same fret, but on the A string now. Middle finger is just staying the way it is, and it's going to sound something like this. Let's pick it first. So you know you got those 3 strings nice and clean. And then for the muting aspect of this chord is a little different. The middle finger is still holding the E string, but giving enough space so that the index finger note can come out. But this index finger is also muting the string right below it. So I'm holding on to the 5th fret of the A string while touching the D string so that is not being played. And then for the E string at the bottom, it's still being held by my like the middle finger here. So it's still touching that. So it'll sound like this. Next chord is the E minor chord. What we're going to do is you're going to start from the D chord, and what you're going to do is the pinky is going to come back out into its original place where you play the G chord right there, 8th fret of the B string, and the middle finger is actually going to come onto the 7th fret of the A string, so right there. So you're going to have to shift your hand a little bit. Your index finger is going to be out of place, and those are the 3 notes. Index finger is out, and with this chord, the way I'm muting, now the way I hold the chord, I can kind of hug the neck at this point when I'm playing this chord. If I just grab it and then I kind of make that shape, I can still grab it, right? So my thumb kind of spills over, and then my index finger is free, and I can touch the E string so that doesn't play. My thumb can touch the bigger E string so that doesn't play. You also need to mute the D string, and my middle finger is doing that. My middle finger is touching the D string while it's holding on to the A string. I hope that made sense. That was a lot right there. But again, trial and error with it. I'm just trying to show you how I do it, and it's going to sound something like this. I'm going to pick it first. And finally, the last chord is C. Now, in order to get there, we're going to start by holding onto the G chord. You're going to use your index finger, and instead of just holding onto one note, this note right here, you're going to lay it flat. I'm going to push down and lay it flat onto the fret so that it's holding onto the D string, the G string, and the B string. Lay it flat. Now let's put the pinky back there where it is and the ring finger. Now you're doing that, right? It's a little uncomfortable. Bear with me here. You're going to let go of the ring finger and keep the pinky. So what your index finger is doing here, so your index finger is the one that's doing most of the work with this chord. It's pretty much barring 3 strings, the D string, the G string, and the B string. You're barring that, right? And then the pinky is still on the 8th fret of the B string. My finger's a little weird. I'm trying to show you here, but if I just hold it naturally, here's my G, and then here's my C. I pushed down on this, let go of my ring finger. Now, obviously, you don't need to focus so hard on the B string because your pinky's got that. But the first two as in the D string and the G string, those need to be played together by the index finger. Now for muting, I'm pretty much doing the exact same thing as I did with the G string. The middle finger is holding these 2 chords just lightly on top, and then the base of my finger is going to be touching the small E string, so that doesn't play. When you start practicing these chords, try to look at each chord as shapes so that when you start playing it in other parts of the neck of the guitar, they'll be a lot easier to play. But the next thing you might be wondering is, okay, you taught me in the key of G. I know G, D, E minor, and C, but what if I'm not in the key of G? Then how do I know what key I'm in? So let me show you a really easy trick that I use even to this day. Whatever note, the note, not the chord, but the note that your pinky is playing from the first chord that I taught you, that is the key you're in. For example, so if I move this maybe up here, you might notice that the pinky is now on the 12th fret of the B string. The 12th fret of the B string would be the note B. That's where my pinky is. Therefore, this chord, the first chord here, is a B chord. Now, if I do the next shape, what is that going to be? It's going to be F sharp. If I do the next shape, you learned that it was E minor down over here, but up here, this is now a G sharp minor. If I do the last chord, that last chord back here was a C, now up here is gonna be an E. Now you're wondering, okay, wait, how did you even know that? How did you know that it changed that much? Like, it's kind of hard to go up the steps, right? But if you guys look in the description, I put together a little document for you that's like a little cheat sheet so that you can see the chords and see how they correlate with each other. Check that out real quickly. But if you're also wondering, how do I know the notes of the guitar? You can honestly just Google like guitar notes on neck. There's gonna be a ton of images that come up. Just click on that images button, and then there's gonna be an image of all the notes like labeled on the guitar neck. So check that out. So for now, the way to practice, I would say, would be to first get the chords down comfortably so that you can play them, and then make sure you get the muting technique down so that when you strum it, you're not playing any other weird notes. You're playing the 3 notes that you're meant to play. After that, try to play it in a progression. So you strum the first chord, then you get to the next chord, strum that, next chord, strum that, next chord, strum that. Make sure that progression that you just did was nice and clean. Now, if you look at the document that I linked in the description, you'll see like different chord patterns. And you can try different chord patterns. So instead of starting on the first note, which is G, what I taught you, start on E minor and do a different chord progression from there. All right, guys, that was it for part 1. I hope you guys liked it. I hope you guys really enjoyed it. If you guys thought this was helpful, if you guys can like the video and subscribe, that would help me a ton. Other than that, I'll see you guys in part 2.